Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since my last video, but it's been a very hectic month. Today I think I want to try something different. Not different as in a different kind of camera, it's still going to be Soviet, different as in a different approach. So some time ago, and unfortunately I'm just barely starting to work on it, I received one Zorki 4 that needs, I mean, it doesn't really need a full CLA, but the owner wants a full CLA on the camera and would also want a custom repaint. Now, custom repaints are something that I've been contemplating for quite some time. I never really knew how to approach this topic, and I still don't really know, but I'm doing some progress. Anyhow, this is the camera. It's a Zorki 4K, and it looks like this. So in order to be less obvious, the owner taped it in what seems to be electrical tape, and you know what, it looks quite nice. I mean, alright, given it's sort of a patchwork, but the overall appearance is super interesting. I mean, it radically changes the way this camera looks. Alright, so in very few words, this is kind of the look that he is after. So something either black or very dark gray in this very matte finish, obviously not with tape but with paint, and pretty much this is what you would expect the final product to look like if you would look at it from a certain distance. Now I will show you what I have already done as repaints. I will talk a bit about what went right, what went wrong, what I used, how I used it, and maybe plans for the future. Alright, so this is the project camera that I'll be working on these following days. The first one that I did, and I eventually managed to finish, is this one. So it's a Zorki 6 and it looks like this. So I did a full repaint on the camera and on the lens. They were both in a very rough shape, especially the lens. Now these Industars tend to age extremely disgracefully. It has been covered in real leather suede. Now I know this is a big no-no because it will get very dirty very fast, but it was more like an exercise. It's already a bit dirty on here, but I'm not really sure if it's dirty because I put my fingers on it or because the actual leather was already dirty. Now you can use like a clean toothbrush to rearrange the little hairs of the leather. Now this is just like did you know trivia or something. Anyhow, so it is fully repaint. I have even repainted little bits like this screw, this little button, these two guys. Now on this PC sinks, I did a mistake. Did not really tape well the inside of the flash boards, so they are kind of messed up. But anyhow, it doesn't matter. It was my first attempt. Okay, now what did I use? First of all, I mean, my first attempt was scale modeling paint. And I bought some enamel paints from Tamiya, everything that I needed, including clear coat. I ordered an airbrush with a compressor, so I was super pumped that I'd be able to come up with a very nice color combination. The advantage of the Tamiya enamel paints, this is one of them, is that they are cheap and then that they come in these little jars. So this is like 12 milliliters of paint jar. No, 10 milliliters. Now, in essence, one of these jars should be enough to paint maybe even 2 cameras, depending on how you dilute the paint, depending on how many parts of the camera you will paint. Now, the problem is that even if this is enamel paint, which should be pretty strong, mechanically speaking, it is not. It is extremely soft. You can scratch it off with your fingernail. It's extremely not resistant to corrosion. So anything from, I think, even pure water to lighter fluid, alcohol, acetone, not even mention it, will ruin the paint. I managed to get like paint marks on a clean tissue, clean dry tissue, just by rubbing it, not much, so a bit of rubbing and the paint started to transfer to the tissue. So unfortunately, no good. And I bought, I wouldn't say a bunch of them, but I bought red, white, black in matte finish, in glossy finish. Also bought some funky sea green, I don't remember the name, the actual name of the color. Some gunmetal, which is like a very dark gray with like golden sparkles inside. And I pretty much have nothing to do with the paints, with those paints, because it was a total disaster. All right, my next attempt was automotive paint. So I went to a paint store. I looked up some RAL codes, so RAL, RAL, yeah, RAL codes for some colors. Bought a couple of colors, I think 2 or 3. Primer, clear coat, matte and glossy, and I did my next camera. This was the first in this combination of light and darker blue, which I think looks quite nice, and in this combination it, in my opinion, is pretty nice. This part, it's obviously unpainted. I just stripped off the old paint and tried a brushed aluminum look using well, at first I used lots of sandpaper and steel wool for the actual final finish, which is this one that has very fine lines, so brushed aluminum style. This is steel wool 00, I think. All right. Now the lacquer, so the clear coat on this camera was glossy, and I found quite a difference between glossy and matte regarding the repaint of all these numbers and letters, which can be a very big pain in the ass. I have a little bit of chip here because when I had to put the top plate back, I probably or certainly bumped this button with the edge of the hole in the top plate, and it made this little it's not a scratch, it's a total chip in the paint, but that's okay. I have some marks here from my little 3D printer tool, So all in all, the paint is not very strong from a mechanical point of view. One of the problems maybe is the thickness of the paint layer. So in this case I used one layer of primer. It was rattle can primer for aluminium, zinc, alloys and stuff like that. Two layers of paint and two more layers of clear coat. So the total thickness is quite big or thick. All right, but again, I think it looks really nice, and probably if the camera is handled with enough care, it should be decent on a medium to long term. All right, and my second camera is this one. It's a Zorki 4. This one goes, or better said, lives for California. So it will go all the way to sunny California. It's a Zorki 4. Obviously, I had to look for a Zorki 4 that had engravings. So this is engraved, everything here is engraved, although painting those little numbers was a total pain in the ass. And it's the reason why there is this difference in shine, let's say, between this part and this part, or this part and this part. And that reason is that when I initially painted it like this, so this is the layers are primer, two layers of black paint. Actually, this is not black, it's RAL 9001, I think, or something like that. It's a very dark gray. And two layers of matte clear coat. And when everything was baked, so it was dry, I tried to paint the numbers and the letters. Obviously, when you do that, you will have excess paint, you'll have too much paint all over the place, and you need to get rid of that paint. Now, since the surface of the items that you are painting is rough, and we'll get to that, to the reason why it's rough in a minute, when you wipe that excess paint, you will get like a smudging of the white or red or whatever color you're using to paint the letters and the numbers in this porosity of the material. And in order to get that contamination off, you will need to use something that's a solvent. And I tried Zippo lighter fluid and I tried alcohol, and in both instances at some point the paint would start to show on the rug that I used to clean. And that means that my clear coat was gone and I was starting to rub off the actual paint. And my conclusion was that the matte clear coat for some reason is not as strong as the glossy one. So I had to go back to square one, redo the elements that have text on it, on them, so either letters or numbers, which parts were obviously the top plate, but also this plate. And this plate is this one. And this one is the plate that contains everything else. So that was a bit of a shit show. I got it decently looking in the end. It's not perfect, but I decided to stop at some point because I really thought I would ruin it again. All right, now the locking keys were initially black, This is a repaint of the key in glossy, and these are the repaints of the spacers under the keys, also in glossy. And obviously you can see here areas where the paint was totally destroyed by the friction between the actual key. Also the key has these marks. So this motion of the key rubbing against the paint of the washer would mean that both the key and the washer or the spacer would get messed up. Now obviously you can't just leave the washer in silver. I mean you can, but it looks nasty in a way. So I decided to strip down the paint and leave the keys as they are. So bare metal, which is this copper alloy or whatever it is, brass, and it has a very nice contrast actually, although these two elements being the only elements in brass is a bit weird, but I had to make a compromise because I didn't have any other option at this moment. The camera has been reskinned. Now this is real leather, real Italian leather. It's super fancy because it's actually the leather used by some very nice shop in Romania to recover steering wheels, gear shifters, so on. So it's very soft, very thin, super good looking. It has the perfect color, so it's this dark gray tint color, and it fits super nice. I had to cut it manually, so even the corners, and overall it looks pretty nice. I have a crease here, so I did some mistake. It was just a bit too wide when I cut it, but I had no chance of removing another, I don't know, a fifth of a millimeter or something, so I kind of squeezed it all in and got this crease, but it's no big deal. It doesn't really look bad or anything. Obviously this job could have been done a lot nicer, but again, that's all I could do at the moment. I also painted all these screws. Obviously when they met the screwdriver, I have a very small chip in the paint here, right in the slot of the screw, and super tiny small bits of missing paint here and there, but I'm pretty satisfied with the way it looks for a very early try in these conditions. All right, and the inside, this is the inside. These areas haven't been painted. It made no real sense. Maybe when I will get my painting process streamlined, I could think of repainting everything, so even the insides, but it's not important for the moment. I even considered repainting this part because it's only a cover in red or something, but I kind of got out of time and ran out of time, and I decided to focus on the more important parts. The shutter is original, so I did not replace the curtains because even though they have slight marks from aging, they are in very good condition. All the ribbons have been re-glued. It's light tight, it works super nicely. So yep, This one goes to California, as I said, and hopefully it will remain in this condition for as long as possible. I know it's not going to last forever because the paint is not strong enough. Now, if I am to be honest, everybody whom I asked about repainting cameras, people who already do this kind of work, everybody recommended Cerakote. Now, Cerakote is ceramic coating. It's extremely thin, 24 or 25 microns, if I remember correctly. That's 1 mil. Mil not as in millimeter, mil as in the measuring unit for the thickness of paint, if you have the right tool to actually measure it. And it has some very big advantages over regular paint. It requires no priming, it requires no clear coat, so it's pretty much, if you get the thickness right, one coat and you're done. So from the time perspective, so the time needed to actually do the job, it's extremely efficient if you get to that point where you are proficient with using it. Now the downside is that the preparation of the parts is extremely important because it will use a mechanical adhesion to the substrate. So it pretty much dries in the porosity of the surface, and that's all that keeps the paint in place, or the coat. And that porosity is achieved by sandblasting the surface, whatever, either metal, plastic, wood, whatever it is, with 100 micron silver oxide, I think, or something else, some sort of sand, whatever. Okay, so you need the sandblaster. You'd need a sandblaster anyway. You'd need a very well calibrated oven. For the automotive paint, you don't really need a super precise baking temperature, I think, or from what I've read. But in the case of Cerakote, the temperatures are super precise. I mean, they must be super precise. 121 degrees Celsius for the age series of the Cerakote, which is 250 Fahrenheit, I think, if I remember correctly. Anyway. And you'd probably need a dedicated spray gun, which is HP LV gun, if I remember correctly. That means high pressure, low volume, which in turn uses an air compressor that should be able to output something like 100 and something liters per minute. And that kind of means it has to have like 2.5 horsepower. So it's a pretty big compressor that has a pretty big tank. Otherwise it can't support that kind of output volume. And my compressor can output 20 or 25 liters per minute, so it's way underpowered. And that means it won't be able to work with that kind of paint gun. It can only work with my airbrush. I could try Cerakote in my airbrush. That would be like the cheapest way of getting in this Cerakote affair. Otherwise, the intro kit from Cerakote, which means 3 paints, some accessories like measuring jar and some cleaning stuff and like stuff like that, and a entry to medium level gun that is like pretty much close to 200 euros. The compressor is another 200-300 euros, so that would send me in the 500 euros price point, which is a bit much for me to invest right now if I'm not really sure that this can get more serious. All right. One of the reasons why I'm really thinking and I would really like to do this custom paints or custom repaints is the fact that unfortunately these Soviet cameras have a very low value of their own because they are not very well regarded for objective and subjective reasons, and I really think a repaint can boost their value, at least for some people. I know this is not for everybody. I know many people feel horror and terror and they squeak inside when they see cameras that have been put through this kind of a process, but others might actually like them or love them or really want one, and it's a niche that I would like to exploit, because I don't think I'm stealing anyone's bread by doing this. So yeah, that's what I would like to do. Now, to try to keep it less than an hour long, as I usually do, some words about the Zorki 4, because that's the camera in question. This is a top plate of a Zorki 4. It's dead. This is another plate of a Zorki 4. It's also dead. And I will explain why in just a second. Now, 63 and 69. The 69, because I have a list of all my serial numbers, the 69 is actually the original top plate of this camera. And what happened is that I got it painted, everything back together, shutter put back, everything tested, everything was working nicely, when I realized that there was a play in this shaft. So this is the normal play of this shaft. It's quite small. Well, in this case, the play was like more than a millimeter left to right, so it was immense. And because of that play, the gap between the curtains was no longer squared and the shutter speeds were no longer working correctly. It was like the shutter was dragging because lots of friction started to happen in very unwanted places. So I initially thought that these two little guys are to blame. Now, this one was supposed to be here, the other one was supposed to be down here. I will get to this when I'm disassembling the black guy with the tape on it. Okay, now normally you must not have this kind of a play, so it's a lot. Also, normally after you take this one off, which is a pig of a job, we'll get to that, this part shouldn't just fall off. And obviously you can't just put it like this. You need to push it a bit so it can pass over like a ledge and click in place. After it's clicked in place, it will spin freely. Okay, so what happened? In order to repaint a camera, um, now what I'm going to say does not apply to Cerakote. That's another advantage of Cerakote, that you can actually apply it over hard chromed parts. Now this is a hard chromed part, right? Hard coating or hard chroming means that this is not just ornamental, it's actually um, quite scratch proof, so it's quite resistant mechanically because it was electroplated. So if you want to use Cerakote on top of a hard chromed part, all you need to do is sandblast that part with 100 microns, and you don't need to go all the way through to the bare metal. You can just sandblast it so you have an even porous surface, and the Cerakote will adhere to that surface because it's, as I said, a mechanical bound, not a chemical one, if again I understood it correctly. Bear in mind, as I said before, I have only painted 2 cameras and the lens so far, so my experience is like pretty much zero. I will just tell you what I did, how I did, where I know I made mistakes, and also where I don't know if I made mistakes but things didn't work out as I expected them to work. Alright, so because I'm not using Cerakote and I'm using like regular paint, I had to strip down the chrome as much as possible. And there are 2 ways of doing it. One way is a chemical way, and the chemical way implies or involves muriatic acid, which is hydrochloric acid in 30% dilution. Usually you can get it from, I don't know, shops that sell like household items for cleaning and stuff like that. It's used to clean glass, rocks, tiles, stuff like that. Now, if you submerge a brass part that's chromed in that muriatic acid, the muriatic acid will actually eat up the chrome, will put up a lot of nasty smokes or fumes, but the chrome will get taken away from the parts. Now, both, if I remember correctly, have been in such a bath. Obviously, this one has also been sandblasted, and you see there's a difference in color, so obviously there is some chrome left around here. This one, for some reason, didn't react as good as this one, so it's like the chrome is here, all of it. I don't know why, because I've left it for, I don't know, some hours in that solution. This one was left for 30 minutes and it was pretty much enough. Anyway, you can sandblast your way all the way down to the copper part. The problem is that this chrome, or this chroming layer, is extremely strong and it takes like forever to take it off, and even when you think you've got it all off, mist, 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 and so on. Now, the problem in my case with both of these top plates is the fact that if you happen to put aluminium in that muriatic acid, some very nasty shit is going to happen. Meaning that the aluminium will totally dissolve in a very powerful reaction, chemical reaction, so it's a very exothermic reaction. It creates a lot of heat, and it feels like the doors of the hell were opened and things are boiling inside, and yeah, try not to put aluminium inside. By the way, if you put this inside, which I did, stripped of the pressure plate and the locking keys and everything else, but if you put this inside, you will be left with this. So only the bottom part, everything here will vanish, and as I said, you will be left with this bottom part, these 4 rivets, come on, which are actually these, and with these. That's it. Everything on the back gone. So don't do that. Trust me, I did it and things didn't work out well for that back plate. Luckily I have enough spares to replace the missing parts. And that's what happened to these two guys. Apparently, and for some unknown reason, in here, so this is the hole where this sits, the main shaft goes through this hole, and obviously you don't want to have play here. And for some reason this hole was kind of lined with something like an aluminium bush or some alloy based on aluminium, and when I dipped them in the muriatic acid, those bushings disappeared, and obviously I can't use these anymore because I have that play that messes up with the shutter. And because of that, these two guys are now test dummies. I will try different approaches with my painting just to see if I can improve the results without the Cerakote. Okay, one option that I'm thinking about, at least for my cameras, is to actually, I don't know, maybe get this part like this. So brass and super shiny, or brass and maybe like a brushed aluminium. Let me see what happens. Yeah, that could be an option. It's not going to be easy. It would mean probably sandblasting everything down to the bare metal, but it needs to look like this. And then sandpaper everything until you get rid of the sandblasted surface, which is this one. And then use some steel wool at the end. But let's see what happens if I use the steel wool on this part, which is already interesting. And if I try to use a sandpaper first, it doesn't look bad, but obviously the edges will have a lot more shine than the middle, because when you push down, the pressure on the edges is apparently higher, but it doesn't look bad at all. So this would be an option, to just sandblast, um, sand it down, and then like polish it with this steel wool until I get a very nice bare metal shiny surface. The lettering, I don't really care. It probably looks best left alone, so no repaint on that part. And the rest of the camera in black. So black top plate, black leather, black bottom or back plate with golden keys, because I already established that for the time being I can't repaint the keys. Yeah, that would look quite wicked. Yep, quite wicked. All right. Anyhow, now that I've learned something else, one more problem with the Zorkis. As far as I know, the Zorki 4 is the only Zorki that has both engraved letterings and silkscreen letterings, depending on the year of production. All Zorki 4Ks have silkscreened text. That means I must leave untouched both this dial and this dial, otherwise everything will be gone, and I have no way of engraving the dots and numbers and so on. So unfortunately these two guys will be left alone. If I were to do one of my older Zorkis, I would be able to actually strip everything down and repaint, because those are engraved. And also, as far as I know, these are made from the same alloy. So I could have a black top plate with golden rings, and that would look very, very, very nice. But that's another story for another day and another project. Okay. What else? What else? What else? I can't show you the actual process of airbrushing the parts, but there are like millions of videos on the YouTube about how to do that. And I can't, because it's in the tool shed where I don't have any kind of lighting conditions, the equipment, and so on. I can't even talk when I'm doing it because I'm wearing a respirator mask. Okay, so conclusions for tonight. This is the camera. The process is, as always, strip everything down, clean everything, polish everything, prepare everything to be put together, prepare all the parts that need to be repainted, and then repaint them, put everything back together. I will talk more about the actual repaint steps, so parts preparation, priming, painting, clear coat, oven time, and so on, as I go through the steps or through the stages. And again, it is not this series is not supposed to be a series with advice or pieces of advice. It's my experience, so it's my way of having fun. Everything is an experiment. Everything has the potential of working out or not working out. Do not, I mean, if you want, do not copy me. Maybe just learn something from me as what not to do, because for sure I will have a lot of do not do these stories. All right, and the lens, has a very nasty sound to the aperture ring. So yeah, that will have to be addressed as well. Okay, I've talked enough again. I will see you next time in the next installment of the series. Now, I'm not going to go into very much detail on the camera itself, on the steps, because I have already done that in my previous Zorki 4 series. Now, I know that my previous Zorki 4 series is a bit lackluster here and there. Parts have been fast forwarded because I don't even know who the hell sits and watches like one and something hour long videos of a random guy explaining how to take out this screw and that screw, but apparently some people actually do that. I will maybe talk a bit about this. So unlike the Zorki 4, the 4K has a lever, and the lever has a spring inside. It's pretty much similar to the Zorki 6. There is a potential way of removing these as one piece. So in theory you can remove this without losing tension on the spring. Personally, the only Zorki 4K that I've worked on missed that possibility because it missed a hole in this assembly. The best way is to just remove it, because it's not that hard to put back. Even on the Zorki 6, it was a bit frustrating at first, the first couple of tries, but then I got the hang of it and I took it off and put it back on, I don't know, 10 times maybe. It's no big of a deal. All right, everything else inside the camera is Zorki 4. No difference at all. Maybe I will spend some time talking about certain things or certain parts where things can go wrong, or I don't know, stuff like that. Oh, and by the way, if you happen to submerge the top plate of a Zorki 4 in the muriatic acid, let me get my glove off because I want to touch the nice one. This will happen. See, this one is missing that little eyepiece. It makes no difference, it works just the same. You can see just the same through the viewfinder. Unfortunately, this is also made of some aluminium or aluminium alloy, and unfortunately is kind of riveted in place. So if this thing goes to hell, you're done. That's it. Now, of course, I could have replaced the top plate with another top plate from one of these two cameras that have become donors, but unfortunately both were silk screened and I needed the engraved one, so I decided to just leave this in place. It looks a bit funky without that thing on, but after a while you don't even notice it anymore. That's reality. Things can go wrong, things will go wrong. You have to be kind of prepared, and you have to assume some losses along the way. Anyway, long story short, thank you for watching. I hope it will be an entertaining series. Again, it's not a how-to or how to do something series, it's a how not to do things maybe series. It's my experience, you'll see the results, you can decide for yourself. A lot of work is involved, so repainting a camera to that kind of extent is it's a lot of work, an incredible amount of work, but the results can be very, very nice. Of course, you don't need to paint like all the screws like I did, but I really wanted a very slick, unassuming, darkish look that is now ruined by the two golden Lokis, but it certainly looks interesting. Alright, thank you, good night, see you next time.